Cold has a reputation for killing through starvation or dramatic freezing, but history tells a far harsher truth. In extreme environments, hunger rarely kills first. Even cold itself is often not the direct cause of death. Exposure is. World War II provides the clearest proof of this reality. Millions of soldiers endured brutal winters with inadequate gear, inconsistent rations, and minimal shelter. Yet the decisive factor in survival was not food intake or even temperature alone. It was how well they managed exposure to wind, moisture, ground contact, and exhaustion. Most modern cold weather survival advice fails because it focuses on the wrong enemy. During World War II, armies learned, often too late, that a human body can function for weeks with limited calories, but only hours when exposed improperly to cold. Soldiers who froze did not starve to death. They lost heat faster than they could produce it. Exposure, not hunger, was the silent killer. The modern survival narrative emphasizes calories, fire-starting gadgets, and insulated gear. World War II experience shows that none of those mattered if exposure wasn't controlled first. Soldiers on the Eastern Front and in the Ardennes frequently went days on reduced rations. Hunger weakened morale and strength, but exposure killed quickly. Men collapsed not because they were starving, but because wet clothing, wind, and ground contact stripped heat relentlessly from their bodies. One of the biggest failures of modern advice is the obsession with fire as the solution to cold. World War II soldiers often could not light fires. Smoke revealed positions. Light drew artillery and air attack. Fire was a liability more often than a comfort. Survival depended on managing heat without flame. This meant controlling airflow, insulating from the ground, and staying dry above all else. Wind was the primary threat. At near zero temperatures, even a moderate breeze can double heat loss. World War II manuals stressed positioning over shelter construction. Soldiers were trained to sleep on reverse slopes, inside tree lines, or in shallow depressions that blocked wind. A foxhole that stopped airflow preserved more heat than a tent flapping in the open. Exposure doctrine taught that stopping wind was equivalent to raising the temperature by several degrees. Ground contact was equally dangerous. Frozen earth drains body heat continuously. World War II soldiers lacked sleeping pads, yet they understood separation was critical. Pine boughs, brush, straw, sandbags, spare clothing, even rope coils were placed beneath the torso. The material didn't need to be warm, it needed to trap air. Soldiers who failed to insulate beneath them lost heat until they could not recover it. Moisture management was the most misunderstood factor then, and honestly it still is now. Sweat killed. Soldiers who overdressed while marching soaked their clothing, and when they stopped moving, that moisture froze. World War II training emphasized, controlled discomfort during movement and immediate insulation during rest. The rule was simple: underdress while active, overdress while stationary. Wet socks were rotated constantly. Feet were dried almost obsessively. Frostbite wasn't treated as just bad luck, but rather as a failure of discipline. This runs directly counter to modern survival advice that encourages bundling up at all times. World War II proved that sweating in cold environments actually accelerates exposure. A slightly cold soldier could survive. A wet one, more often than not, could not. Hunger, by contrast, was secondary. Calorie intake mattered for long-term endurance, but, short-term survival depended on exposure control. Soldiers frequently slept cold and hungry but lived because they blocked wind, insulated from the ground, and, crucially, stayed dry. The human body can ration energy. It cannot stop physics. Another modern myth is that solitude improves survival. World War II demonstrated the opposite in cold conditions. Soldiers slept in pairs or small groups whenever possible, shared body heat, reduced surface area exposure, and preserved core temperature. This wasn't comfort. It was survival math. Lone soldiers froze faster, especially when exhausted. Movement discipline was also critical. Exposure doesn't only happen when standing still, it happens when exhaustion prevents circulation. World War II units rotated sentries and sleepers to ensure periodic movement. Toes were flexed, hands were worked, boots were loosened to restore blood flow. Small actions prevented catastrophic heat loss. Mental discipline mattered as much as technique. Cold erodes judgment. World War II accounts repeatedly describe soldiers who knew what to do but were too exhausted to do it. Survivors followed routines mechanically. Check socks, adjust layers, block wind, insulate ground, move limbs. Those who skipped steps died quietly. Exposure punished complacency. Modern survival culture often promotes extreme scenarios, starving in the wilderness, dramatic rescues, heroic endurance. World War II shows a more mundane reality. Survival hinged on boring decisions made repeatedly under stress. The men who lived were not tougher or better fed. They were more disciplined about exposure control. The lesson is clear. Cold or hunger alone won't kill you quickly. Exposure will. Wind strips heat, moisture accelerates loss, ground contact drains warmth, exhaustion prevents recovery. World War II soldiers didn't survive winter nights because they had better gear. They survived because they understood these principles and applied them ruthlessly. For modern survivalists, the takeaway is uncomfortable but vital. Gear is secondary. Calories are delayed concerns. The first priority is exposure management. If you can block wind, stay dry, insulate from the ground and maintain circulation, you buy time. Time keeps you alive long enough for hunger to matter later. World War II didn't teach survival through theory. It taught it through attrition. Millions paid for these lessons with frostbitten limbs and lives. Ignoring them today doesn't make them obsolete, it makes them dangerous to forget. If you want more history that cuts through modern myths and shows what actually kept people alive under the worst conditions imaginable, subscribe to the channel and share this with someone who still thinks survival starts with gear lists. History already tested that idea and it failed.